Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come in, come in, come in. This is Tamika's Den. I am Tamika. Child, y'all get on in here. Y'all come on in the den. All right. Relax, relate, release. Put up your feet. Get comfortable. Ouch. You see my face? What was this, y'all? What was this? I feel like this is deja vu. I feel like I said the same exact thing when we had the mid-season finale. This was supposed to be the finale, y'all. Okay, this was Make Him Great, season 4, episode 22. Okay, and we get this coming back to us in October. Okay, and also the Oval coming back in October. And I will be reviewing both of them when they come back. But, child, what was this? What was this? Okay, this did not do what it was supposed to do. It did not give what it was supposed to give. Like, it was some funny parts, in my opinion. But as far as the storyline, as far as, just stuff to look forward to, as far as any action, it wasn't there for me, okay? It just wasn't. But y'all put it in the comments, of course, as always, and let me know what y'all think. But that is my take on this season finale right here, okay? But we gonna go ahead and get into, okay, some of the stuff that went down. So, of course, we picked up where we left off at. And we have, the senator's wife still in this hotel talking about some I want you. And this whole storyline just doesn't make sense to me. It seems mad random, okay? I really felt like maybe Hayden was behind this because I just don't see the point of her saying, well, this lawyer called me or whatever. I'm like, okay, was Hayden the lawyer? And your answer is to sleep with him and then you're not going to tell on him. But in all reality, unless you made some kind of side deal with them, you would go down too just as well as him. So that just didn't make sense to me. And Zach is basically like telling her, like, I heard what you said. I'm flattered, but I can't, okay? He's telling her that he can't do it, and she's talking about, am I disgusting? And he's like, no, I'm not saying all of that. And she's like, oh, well, that's how you're acting. And he was like, no, I'm just not with it. Like, I know this might sound crazy, but I'm in love. And she talking about something, oh hell. And, she was like, look, I know that you're young. And he was like, what's that supposed to mean? He was like, I could tell that you old. And she telling him how she was in love for 30 years and he left her high and dry. And that's why she in the hotel room desperate, begging him for sex. So now this isn't about the case. This is about your husband and you feeling away and wanting to get back at him. Like, make it make sense, okay? And he's just basically saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and head out. And she's like, well, I mean it, Zach, I'm a cold-blooded bitch. And if you leave, and then he's saying, ma'am, and she's basically like, don't ma'am me. And she's like, listen, you called me here for this. Like, seriously, come on. That's what Zach was telling her. And so she's like, well, I'm going to make an appointment with the SEC. And at this point, she's saying she want to tell them that she need to speak to him. And Zach is basically like, do what you gotta do, okay? Like, listen, lady, I'm over it. I'm ready to go, okay? And she's saying that he gonna go to jail. He was like, well, I'm not scared of jail. I mean, at the end of the day, I done been through all kind of stuff. And she's like, you're bluffing. He's like, look at my face. Do I look like I'm bluffing? I mean, Zach has technically been locked up, 17, 18 times already? So I don't think he cares, but she says, she gonna give him a couple hours to think about it. She's still trying to, like, give him the key and all of that. And he's saying, trust me, I'm good. And he's telling her that she needs to go ahead and stop drinking, okay? She don't need no more drinks. And, he go ahead and he leave, right? And then he calls Jake and to ask him if he can meet him. We have Fatima come inside of the office with Andy, and she was supposed to have another file for Andy and it's not there, so she's saying it's on her laptop and is in the car. Sorry, she's gonna run down and get it. And Andy basically is like, yo, is it really stressing you like that? Is he stressing you like that? She's like, sit down for a minute, talk to me. She was like, I know you, and I could see that there's something else going on and something wrong. What is this about? And at first Fatima's like, no, I don't want to really put no more on you. I don't want to talk about it or whatever. And then she starts to, open up a little bit. She was like, okay, I don't want to talk about, the Hayden. And Andy tells her, like, is all this stuff that Hayden is saying true? And she's like, wait, you know about it already? And she's like, yeah, a little bit. And so she was like, he's saying some pretty disturbing stuff. Like, is that real or not? And so Fatima saying she don't want to panic, and that she trying her best to hold it together, whatever, and now is not the time to panic. She's like, but this is, stressing her out or whatever. And then Andy's like, yeah, look at you, I could see it. And then, Fatima's telling her, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So she was like, Fatima, you can't wait too long until they get really bad. And she was like, yeah, I understand that. But, like she said, when Auntie kept asking her, do you want to talk about it? She was like, nah, I'll just want to leave it alone. She was like, okay, so we're going to focus on work. So at this point, she's saying, yeah, that's what she's going to do. And she was like, but I do want to talk to you about Karen for a minute. And so Andy, of course, is like, oh, Lord, like, okay, yeah, I knew it. What's going on? And Fatima was like, I know she's your friend and all. And Andy was like, she is. She was like, but she almost caught one last night. And she was like, Fatima, why do you choose violence? It's early in the damn morning and you already coming in here, And Fatima was like, no, seriously, can you talk to her about showing up unannounced? That ain't cool. And Andy's like, I did. And she was like, you did? She was like, yeah. She was like, I spoke to her and she regrets it. So Fatima's like, good. So she was like, especially after the baby mama showed up. So Fatima's like, oh, she told you it all, huh? She's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? For you forget that I'm me. And so, Fatima's like, yeah, I know. So she's like, what the hell, Fatima, another baby? And she's like, yeah. And she starts laughing. And Andy is basically like, what is, it's funny. And she asked her, is it his? And Fatima's like, I don't know. She's like, so why are you smiling right now? And she was like, because it's funny. What else am I going to do? That's, I guess, her coping mechanism. And she's like, you'd find this funny. She's like, well, Zach is cute and he is funny and he is lovable and he just always seems to find himself in the craziest situations or whatever the case may be, right? In the most stupid situations. And so she was like, and you think that's funny? She was like, it's not, but it's his lack of judgment. And she basically was saying it makes me question him sometimes and whether he has it all there. And so Andy was saying that makes sense. She could understand that. And she also said, when you look at the situation with, him and his mom, and Andy is like, yeah, I know. And she was like, no, it's really, really bad. It's horrible. She was like, but at the end of the day, he is a good man. And she was like, I just think he never found a girl that would really hold him down. And he never had a girl like me. And so, Andy was basically just kind of like mostly shaking her head, agreeing with her, and just listening to her and saying, I understand. But then when she started saying the part about he never had a woman like that, that could just make him into a better man, Andy was kind of like, okay, girl. And she was like, no, what was that all about? What was that? What does that mean when you say okay like that? And she basically was like, it just sounds very familiar, okay? In other words, Cameron has sat beside her and told her that before as well. And she basically was like, well, this is two different situations, which it is, okay? With Karen, I guess he wasn't ready and he wasn't in the place for that. And then with Fatima, he's completely different. And so she was saying, I agree that Zach has the potential to be a good man. And Fatima was like, what? And then all of a sudden she starts comparing him with this car, talking about, when she was in college, she seen this car. She thought it was perfect for her. She was like, it's going to be mine. A lot of people kept saying it's a fixer-upper. Don't get that. You're going to have to put a lot of money into it. And she had her mindset like, I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to fix this car. All the money she had, every dime she made, she put into the car and making it look better and nice and beautiful and shiny or whatever. But then when it came time for her to be driving it, and it was hers or whatever the case may be, but whenever she got on the road, it was constantly breaking down, okay? And so, in other words, Fatima can't think that she's gonna fix Zach. And then a lot of times, she says she has sold it for a huge loss, and at the end of the day, no matter how much she wanted to make it better, it just wasn't, and it wasn't worth it. And I get what she's saying. I get the analogy to a certain degree. But she was saying, well, is Zach really worth it? And Fatima was like, yeah. And that's the difference, though. Because it's not a thing where Zach is like, keep breaking down or he keep messing up or doing the things that he was doing when he was with Karen. He's been showing that he's trying to make that change. And he is a different person in a lot of ways. So you can't compare it when it comes to that part of it, right? And Fatima was telling her that it is worth it. All right. And so she's like, okay, girl, as long as you know that that's what it's meant to be and you want it and y'all both all in, then, you know what I'm saying, I'm with you there or whatever. And so basically they just started laughing and they pretty much was on the same page. And she was like, but you do have a good man and I do believe that he can be great and you're gonna put a lot of work into it or whatever. And Fatima was like, I got it, thank you, and she was like, now get your life together or whatever the case may be. And so she said, yeah, she was gonna run down now and look for those files in her car. So when she coming out and walking past, who's standing out there but raggedy ass Gary, okay? And so at first she just was walking past him and then she stops and turns around and was like, well, what are you doing here, okay? And he told her he there to see his lawyer. And she's like, well, Andy don't want to see you. He gonna talk about something. That bitch ain't my lawyer. Like, oh, she a bitch now, Gary? Just that fast she became a bitch? Okay. And so, of course, Fatima like, what did you say? And he's like, you heard me or whatever. And she's like, oh, okay. So we see Sabrina inside this shop. She ordering, I think it was like a green juice or whatever. And Bayo miraculously shows up the same place as her too. He talking about he was coming in there to get a drink too. But mind you, we never see him get a drink. I believe he's tracking her now and following her because that was just too much a coincidence for me. He's apologizing again and he basically ends up taking out this, his phone and showing her this picture where supposedly is this tribe where he lives at and all of them look like Danny. And she's like, wow, they really do look like Danny. She was like, wow, oh my God, okay, you was telling the truth as far as that point, part goes, because she was surprised to see him there too. Like, what are you doing here? And when he's apologizing, she's like, no, really, it's no big thing. And he's like still saying, can he forgive a foolish man? And he should have known better. And can he make it up to her and all of that kind of stuff? And he was like, he just happy to see her happy. So he said, do you have a minute to stay? And she was like, no, actually, I got to hurry up and get to work. So he's like, well, can I see you again? And it's like, okay, well, I'll think about it. You already know how Sabrina is. So he was like, how soon would be too soon or whatever. And she just told him, like, call her. So he was like, okay, I will. And, she asked him if he could send this picture to her. And he was like, yeah, I could text it to you right now. He had paid for her juice. So she was telling him thank you for that or whatever the case may be. And, he sends it to her. And she's like, he says, did you get it? She said, yeah, she did. And so then she sends it to Danny. And Danny calls her like, who is these random women? And she's like, look closer. She was like, okay, I still don't know who these random women are. She's like, Danny, you don't see that you look like them? And Danny was like, have you seen me? Hell no. She was like, come on, Danny, really look at it. She was like, where did you even get these from? So she was like, Bayo just sent them to me. That's why he was staring at you like that, because these women basically look like you. And she was like, and you believed him? She's like, kind of. And she's like, oh, wow, Sabrina. Like, okay, girl, And she was like, hey, she's like, what? She's like, I got a bridge to sell you if you want to buy it. So Sabrina's basically like, never mind. And she was like, okay, listen, I know you like him or whatever the case may be. And Sabrina's like, yeah, I just thought the whole thing was weird. And Danny's like, okay. And she was like, yeah, I was here at the store and he showed up. That was also kind of weird too, don't you think? And so Danny tells her, well, it's all a little strange, And then she says that she do kind of like him. And she was like, I know how you do or whatever. And she says she thinking of seeing him again. And Danny's just like, all right, great, girl. And then Sabrina tells her, okay, well, I'm going to go because I got to get, to work or whatever. I'll call you back later. And Danny was like, all right. So we seeing that, Mr. freaking Logan comes up to Danny or whatever. And he talking about some, how you doing, apologizing again as well, asking her how she liked dinner. And she's like, it was good until you had to go running off or whatever. And he's saying, well, maybe they could make it up. And she was like, no, why would I go on another date with you when you over here, trying to take my friend down or whatever. And, he tells her he's not trying to take her down. He's just trying to do an investigation and that he's waiting for some FBI to fly in or whatever. And she's like, okay, well, you know what I mean? Same difference. And he over here talking about some, oh, you didn't tell your friend what I said, did you? And I'm like, what was there for her to tell her? First of all, you said there was no information that you could give her. Second of all, you was like, tell her to be careful and tell her to call a lawyer. So are you now saying that she shouldn't have told her that? Like, what else would there be for her to tell? So I was confused. That didn't make sense with him even saying that. But nonetheless, he's saying that he just trying to do his job and going with the information that he have. And he's like, well, my guys are here, whatever. And she's like, great, okay. And he says that he'll talk to her later. She's like, yeah, okay. And she's just basically looking at all of them. She's like, what the heck do you expect when he's asking her about another date? Like, nah, you trying to go after my friend. That's my friend. And I know that she wouldn't even be involved in anything like that or do anything like that. And to me, that whole storyline is stupid. It makes absolutely no sense. Like I said, if he's supposed to be such the good cop that they claim he is, or that he made himself seem like he is when he was doing the whole sex trafficking thing, how is it that now all of a sudden you're dealing with robberies and then you had to wait for FBI to be called in from somewhere else? Child, I don't know. That storyline just don't make sense to me. And why would you believe Q when you hear that recording, you could tell that Maurice is just being sarcastic and repeating after him? And what other solid information do you have on Sabrina, even if Q gave you the tape of Maurice? Like, how does that put Sabrina into it too? I'm confused. So I want to see what the hell is supposedly the evidence that he's supposed to have to even be investigating her. All right. But nonetheless, of course, like I said, Gary has showed up at Andy's office and all of that. So Hayden had came out and got him. Now, at first, when Fatima goes in the office and is saying to Andy, like, yo, Gary is here. She like, what? Well, tell him I don't want to see him. She was like, that's the whole thing. He's saying he's not even here to see you. She's like, well, what is he here for? She was like, wow, that's strange. She said, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. But then they both thought about it, like, are you sure about that, Hayden? And she's like, you're right. So she was like, she going to go ahead and see what's happening. So we got Raggedy behind Gary, Raggedy number one. And Raggedy number two, Hayden, sitting in the office talking. And he comes in like, what do you do or whatever if you bought somebody an apartment and you want to take it back? He's like, who did you buy an apartment? He's like, yo, seriously, bro, you went and bought her apartment after what I told you or whatever, with the guy? He's like, yeah, the same one that you thought was hitting on you. He like, yeah, you got a point there. So he's like, well, is it in your name? He was like, yo, are you serious? Because, of course, Gary put everything in her name. And he was like, is there any way around it? So he said, yeah, he could see what he could do to help him or whatever the case may be. And he basically was like, saying, and what about a car too? So basically, Gary just basically got buyer's remorse, and he was like, I'm gonna help you out. He was like, you could sue her for it, And so Gary was like, okay. He was like, thank you. Anything you could do, tell me everything I have to do. And he said, of course, Hayden is like, he's happy to file it. And he was like, isn't that a conflict? And he said, no, it's not a conflict because they're in different divisions. And he was like, as a matter of fact, let me worry about this. And you could even sue her for, he's saying that he would really, love it or whatever, right? And he basically was saying he could like sue her for, what the heck was it? I'm sorry, y'all, let me look at my notes. I know I had it wrote down. Oh, for pain and suffering. And Gary's like, yeah, I like that. Yeah, man, that's a good one. This is good. Okay, so that's essentially what he trying to do. So then we get Jake coming to Zach, right? And he says, you got here fast. He was like, well, you told me it was an emergency or whatever the case may be. I came as soon as I could. So he was like, what's up? What's going on? So he's like, yo, can I really trust you? He was like, come on, you gonna ask me that now after everything that's been going on? He was like, can I trust you? So he was like, yeah, tell me what the heck is going on. Like, you're the one that called me over here. So he starts to basically tell him about the senator's wife, of course, and the fact that she want to have sex with him and all of that. And he's like, yo, you kidding me? And he's like, no, she's saying, if I don't, she's basically trying to blackmail me or whatever. And that she would turn me into the, SEC. And he was like, do you think that I could pass everything with them? I guess trying to just weigh his options or whatever, right? And let him know that she was the lady that gave him the stock take And now she's blackmailing him. So of course he was like, what does she want? And he was like, she wants to have sex with me. And Jake is like, whoa. And he was like, is she fine? That made me laugh. I'm sorry. And so Zach like, stop playing. And he was like, now's not the time, bro. And Jake was basically like, yo, I'm sorry. He was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, bro. So he says, well, what's to stop her from coming back again? And Zach was like, that's the same thing I said. And he was like, well, what if you could make sure that it never happens again? And Zach was like, how do I do that? He was like, I don't know, be really bad at sex. And Zach talking about I don't know how to be bad at sex. Then he gonna talk about, don't wash your ass before you go. I said, Jake, you got jokes. And so, Zach was saying, I'm being serious right now, bro. He was like, I really don't know what to do, and that, Fatima would kill him or whatever the case may be. And so Jake was like, well, what are you going to do or whatever? And he was like, that's when he asked him if he really think he's ready to face the SEC. And, Jake is telling him, yeah, I think you ready. He was like, I don't see why not. And he was like, it could be a possibility that they could use her as a witness, though. And so Zach was like, damn. So he was like, well, do you really think she'll stay quiet if you have sex with her? So, here comes Fatima like, oh, if you sleep with her. And Jake was so damn extra. He talking about, oh, shit. And he start like stuttering and stumbling, and Zach talking about some, hey, whoa, and she's like, whoa, what are you doing here? Repeating after him. She's like, I left my laptop and I came back for it to get it for work. And so he was like, Jake, and Jake was like, yeah, I'm going. I'll catch you later. He ran out of there so fast. Okay, he did not want to be there, and he was telling her she looked good in the blue and green or whatever. And so here comes Zach talking about some, hey, baby. And she was like, did you sleep with her? You know what I'm saying? If you sleep with her. And he was like, listen, the lady that gave me the stop tick call, she's in town or whatever. And he just started laying everything out for her. Like, basically, she's trying to, blackmail him. She's at the hotel, and she says if he sleeps with her, then, you know what I mean, she's not going to say nothing. And he was like, I swear I'm not lying. And so he was saying, of course, that he called Jake to ask him for help. And she was like, so you done told him this. She like, let me get this straight. You called him and you tell him this. So he was like, what was I supposed to do? She's telling him that she's always telling him about Jake. And he was like, well, what are you going to do? He said, you can't help me where the SEC is concerned. You can't go around and bully all of them and beat up all of them or whatever the case may be. And so he was like, he had to tell somebody. And she was like, of course, saying he could have told her. So it gets to the point where he's just like, listen, I don't know what the hell to do, all right? And she was like, listen, do what you got to do. And he was like, stop playing with me, girl. Don't tell me that, because he was like, I will go and F the hell out that old white lady. That was another funny part, too. And she's like, no, do what you got to do. If you got to sleep with her, then do what you got to do. She was like, I got to go. I got other stuff to take care of, okay? And, of course, at one point, she basically had her pocketbook. And we all know how she keep that pocketbook and, that gun in her pocketbook, I should say. So he was asking her, like, what are you doing with that? What you about to do? And she was like, well, first of all, move up off me and move away from me. If your behind don't want to end up having to go down. And he basically was saying, yeah, I definitely don't want to do that. And she was like, I know you don't. So she was like, yeah, handle it, whatever, way you want to handle it. Figure it out, Zach. And she actually leaves, okay? He was basically calling after her. But even though she was acting like she was over it, we all was basically sitting here like, we know Fatima gonna go, especially since he done told her where the lady was staying and all of that. So we get Karen, she's over here. No, I'm sorry, before that part even came, we get Danny again at the airport. And we have Preston. No, I'm sorry, y'all. I had it right the first time. I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember which way it went. We had Karen at the salon, right? And we see Pam is telling some kind of story that has all of them laughing. And she was like, Pam is always lying. And Pam is like, no, I'm telling the truth. That happened for real. And, Karen is pretty much like, okay, Pam, if you say so. So all of a sudden she starts saying, she feels dizzy. Her head hurts. She have like a funny look on her face. Pam asking her over and over and over, is she okay? She's telling her to drink some water, whatever have you. And she drank a little bit of water, and she keeps telling her, what are you, my mother? I said, I'm okay. She was like, you've been standing and doing hair for a long time. You was on your feet for lot of hours, so you probably just need to sit down and rest and chill for a minute. And so then she went from saying like her head is hurting to she feeling a little dizzy, she feeling a little weak. Then it was like, "Ooh, what's that smell?" And she's like, "Girl, what?" She was like, "The perm." She was like, you don't smell how strong it's smelling." And Pam is like, "No, it just smells like, I'm saying, regular perm to me or whatever. But when you're pregnant or whatever, it do be like extra smells will be extra sensitive to you, coming a lot stronger, whatever. And certain things that never bothered you before, will start to bother you out of nowhere." So she's saying all of that, and then she's like, "You know what? I think I might just go home, okay?" Because first she was trying to be real hard-headed, like, "No, I'm good, I'm fine." She was like, "Women do this every day." She was like, "Yeah, but not women that's in your condition." And she was like, "Yeah, well, some of them, I'm saying, in my condition do it as well, too, every day without a problem. But just because some people could do it, that don't mean everybody could do it either, right? We got to be all, like, adjusting for our situation." And so she had a lady in her chair, and she had just finished with her and told her she was good to go. And she was like, "I'm pretty much almost done anyway." So, basically, I guess looking at it like I'm fine and I got most of the hard stuff out the way or whatever the case may be, right? But then she starts complaining of all these different symptoms, one behind each other. So it got to a point where she was like, "You know what? Maybe I will go home." She was like, "As a matter of fact, I'm going to go lay like in the car for a minute and see how I feel or whatever," right? And I was even thinking like, go lay in the back for a minute, because you might not even want to be driving if you're like that. And then when Karen was asking her, did she want to take something for the headache, she was like, "Well, damn, no, because that might not be good for you to take medicine in your condition either." And she was like, "I'm not going to say, I'm saying, what it is, because obviously Karen was worried about customers or whoever hearing it, right?" And so she was saying no, she couldn't take anything or whatever, right? She's like, "No, that's not a good idea." But she does say that she would probably just go ahead and lay across in the car for a minute. And so the next thing you know, Pam is like, "Oh God." And she was like, "What?" And she like lifted up, the things that you, like, an apron thing that they put over you when you getting your hair done. Pam ends up lifting that up in the front of her and was like, "You're bleeding." And Karen is like, "What?" And she's like, "You're bleeding." And then she's like, "Oh my God." And she grabs Pam and they go running or whatever the case may be. And then it just cut. And I'm like, really? So now we got to wait, till next season to find out what happened. But that doesn't shock me, because literally in my last week's review, I was saying that, Karen running around ready to fight people, cursing people out, going off every minute, and that stress can be very dangerous. Stress will make you sick. And if you're pregnant, there's definitely a chance of you putting stress on that baby and that baby having different complications. So we gotta wait to see what's gonna happen with that. But that does not shock me with everything that daggone Pam been doing. And so hopefully if she don't, end up having a miscarriage or whatever, then she will do what she gotta do and keep her behind still and stop carrying on around and, worried about what everybody else is doing and what Zach is doing and popping up at his house and all that stuff. Maybe this is going to end up giving her a different perspective. Or if she does have a miscarriage, I could see her going into a very deep depression and probably just blaming herself because she was busy carrying around and, carrying on every minute. So, that could go either way. We then had, Preston. He shows up at the airport to see Danny. She's like, "Oh, so what's going on? You just making your way through. She's like, "Oh, hey," or whatever. And he says, "I see you still not happy to see me." And she's like, "It's not that, Preston." And he's like, "Well, I'm sorry." And so she was like, "You don't have to apologize. What are you doing? You bought a ticket to come back here?" And he says, "Well, actually, I bought a ticket to go home." So she's like, "Oh, okay." And she was like, "Well, have a safe flight." And he's like, "I'm going home for good." So she's like, "Oh, really? All right." So, excuse me. So he's basically like, "Yeah, I don't really have nothing here in Atlanta anymore for me to stay for." So she's like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "Yeah, you was the main reason," because she said she was sorry to hear that. And he was like, "Honestly, you was really the only thing and the only reason why I stayed as long as I did." And I guess with them not being together no more, he was like, "I'm a country boy at heart," or whatever. And she was like, "Yeah, I could tell by the hat." And Preston was looking good in his little cowboy hat, okay. But he was like, he would have called, but, he didn't really feel like she was going to answer his call or whatever. She wouldn't take the call. And she was like, I always take your call. He was like, well, I thought that maybe you might have missed it. And then by the time you would have called me, hours would have went by and I would have been gone. So she's like, well, okay. So, he was like, Danny, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did wrong. And she was like, really? He was like, I knew you were going to say, that that's the problem. And she was like, that is the problem. He was like, well, she says to him, you was busy listening to Zach instead of me. And he was like, well, I wish you would have told me what I did wrong so that way I could know. And she basically was like, I didn't tell you. And he was like, never mind, Danny. I don't want to relive all of that all over again. He was like, bottom line is that, I would do anything. I'm willing to change anything and everything just to be with you. You know what I'm saying? I really care about you. I love you. And she was like, I only want to be the man that you need and love. You know what I'm saying? And so she just looking like, and he takes out this flower and gives it to her and was like, he wants her to keep it, forever. And she was like, well, it's plastic. And he was like, yeah, that's the point. That way it is everlasting or whatever the case may be, just like my love for you, which I thought was so sweet, okay? But not to Danny, okay? Danny basically was just like, okay, cool. He was saying that it would never die, just like his love would never die. And so, he pretty much was like, it seemed like that was getting to her. She was like, wow, Preston, that's a lot. And, he was like, please, or whatever. But, he told her, please don't say anything. He says, because I made up he made up his mind to leave. But he just, wanted to see whether she wanted to stay and, still wanted it to be a chance. And he was like, I'm going to leave now, okay? And so pretty much Preston went walking away. He says, I love you, Danny, and he walked away. And she gonna say as he walking away, still running. And my whole thing is, Danny, who's running? Is Preston running, or are you running, or are y'all both running? Because that was another storyline that just never made sense to me. Outside of Zatima, I actually really loved Danny and Preston. They had such a good vibe. And in the midway of their relationship, all of a sudden it became, oh, he have a racist family. Oh, he don't understand black women. Oh, he's not giving me what I want. Oh, he barged himself in. When you're literally the one that invited him in, didn't mind when he was offering to pay all the bills, didn't mind when he was cooking for you. It just never made sense. It was like, if that's the case and that's the issues that you had with him, why didn't you been say something about it? It was just backwards, and it just came from nowhere. In my opinion, it seemed very forced, and at the end of the day, I still think Preston is a good dude, and I think she lost out on that one. Okay, so then we had Zach. He went back to the hotel. The lady talking about something. Oh, I knew you was going to be back, She telling him to take off his clothes, get naked as soon as he got in there. He was like, lady, give me a minute. And he basically went and was like, I'm going to need a drink. And then instead of pouring it in the glass, he was like, I'm going to have to take this whole bottle. And he told her, thank you. But then he's drinking it and he's looking at her. He's like, nah, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. There's no damn way I could do this. I don't care what you do. And he threw all the stuff on the bed and was basically about to leave out. But of course, who shows up but Fatima? And she was like, did you do it? He was like, you know better than that. She was like, excuse me. And she did. She was like, I just want to talk to her. He's like, all right, go ahead. He was like, I'm not gonna stop you. So Fatima come walking in, and I had to laugh at this part because the lady basically was like, I don't do threesomes. Like, girl, nobody wants you, okay? Because she was asking, who are you? And Fatima was like, I'm his woman. She was like, I see. So she was like, what exactly do you see? She told him about something. I don't do threesomes. So Fatima and Zach was cracking up. She was like, yeah, no, I'm definitely not interested, girl, okay? Nobody want to sleep with you. So she was like, okay, good. So she was like, and neither is he, Fatima let her. And he was like, I told her that. And she was like, you didn't do it. And he was like, no, I told this lady I wasn't touching her. And she said, yeah, he did say he couldn't do it. And she was like, well, maybe if you look more like me, then he could. And, of course, the lady is saying, don't rub it in, okay? I can't help that. And she was like, I mean, I could help him get it up. And she was like, really, you would do that? She says, because he always get happy looking at her. And, Zach trying to intervene. And she was like, I'm not done. And, you know, she, like I said, she's saying he definitely gets up when he's with her. So Zach over here taking more swigs out the bottle the whole time Fatima talking. And she was like, but this is really some lame shit that you're doing. You're blackmailing him to keep him from going to jail, for him to have sex with you. She was like, I'm sure the people in your hometown would be really interested to hear about this down in DC, okay? Or maybe even more so your husband, because aren't y'all still going through a divorce right now? Okay, the divorce is not even final. And she was like, it wouldn't be good if I came out with all of this information on you now, would it? You know what I'm saying? She was like, Fisher's your husband lawyer. One call, I can, you know what I'm saying, get all this out. And I'm not going to do it in a quiet way. I'm going to make it all come, you know, public. I don't do whispers or whatever the case may be. I come loud. It would be a full-blown, you know, press conference style. And so, you know, of course, homegirl just looking, and Zach telling Fatima calm down. She was like, I am calm. And so she was like, so what are you going to do? Is you going to keep your mouth shut? You know what I'm saying? What is good? And so she was like, you either don't say a damn thing if you don't want nothing to come out, or you going to play dumb. And so basically she was like, you know, all of this is going to go away. And so, you know, the senator's wife is just looking, and Fatima's like, do you understand? And she was like, oh, I just got so mad at my husband. And so Fatima was like, Karen. And Zach was like, Karen, that's funny, about to laugh. And Fatima looked at him, he got serious. She was like, that sounds like a personal problem to me, but this right here is off limits, okay? And so she was like, do you understand? Basically, Miss, you know, senator's wife was like, yes. And she was like, are you going to tell anybody? And Fatima basically was like, darling, that's up to you. And she basically went walking out, right? So that wasn't really no shocker, because we already know Fatima's style, and we know she gonna come through for Zach, and we knew she was gonna show up there. So we get Sabrina at the bank, and Maurice had came in late. She was asking him like, what are you doing here late? Telling him she gonna dock him. And he was like, girl, you can't touch my money or whatever. She was like, oh, well, you had no business, you know what I'm saying, coming in late. You want to tell me why you late? And so then he was like, well, I had a late night. I didn't get in, you know what I'm saying, till late. And she was like, is that guy still staying at your daggone house or whatever the case may be? And then, of course, he's like, you know, yeah. And she was like, oh, I can't believe you. You know what I'm saying? Are you sleeping with him? And he was like, listen, that question is a violation, all right? And she was like, Maurice, I'm serious. Violation from you? So then he was like, well... And she was like, with all the crap, you know what I'm saying, that you say to me and your customers or whatever. And he was like, Hugh was sleeping with Calvin. So she was like, stop. And he was like, yeah, I'm just joking, okay. And he was like, I don't mean that. She was like, well, I don't like him being in your house. And Maurice was like, I know, girl, you keep saying that. She was like, well, it's just not smart. And so he's like, listen, I got it or whatever. So then she was about to say, you know, something else, and was saying, do you, because you really need to get him out your house. And he was like, Sabrina, damn. And she was like, fine, I'll let it go for now. And he was like, thank you. And she was like, but you know, you still, like I said, gonna get docked for being late. And so, child, as they saying all of this, you know, she wanted to hear, and all of a sudden ask about Maurice. And I'm like, it's so funny, because each one of them do this. Like Andy giving, you know, Fatima the advice when she don't follow her own advice with Gary. And people do that in real life too. You know, Sabrina seems to see Maurice stuff so clearly, and what she telling him is right. Q should have never been staying in that house. That storyline was stupid. That should have never even been an option. But then she don't be aware of her own stuff, and so all of a sudden she's asking about Calvin again, and he's like, why are you asking about Calvin? And she starts to say how the guy was acting weird, and how he was looking at Danny, and he's, you know, Maurice talking about some yuck mouth. And so he's like, you know, oh well, he was trying to get with her, and he apologized or whatever. And she was like, yeah. She was like, I don't know, it was a bit strange or whatever. And he was like, do you like him? So she was like, he's okay. So he was like, so that's why you asking about Calvin again. Calvin is basically your fallback guy, all right? And that's some bull. It really should not be where she should still be talking about Calvin. That should be over and done with. You know, she wasn't talking about something, I was just asking. So he was like, bitch, let me tell you something, you know, you being low down and dirty or whatever. So in the midst of them going back and forth, here come Logan Funky behind. You know, this bank is closed. You know, y'all under arrest. You know, coming in mad nasty, mad stink, yelling and screaming. Sabrina and Maurice is both saying, you know, what's going on? What are you talking about? What is this about? You know, they not saying nothing about we gonna read your rights or nothing. He just, put them in handcuffs. They under arrest. So, you know, put your hands behind your back or whatever. How is this investigating Logan? I'm confused. And again, like I said, how was that one little tape a reason to come in there and arrest them? That only had Maurice being sarcastic and saying the stuff back and forth. What other proof do you have? And Sabrina's telling them, y'all made a mistake and all of this. And then she's asking Logan, like, does Danny know that you came here and that you're doing this? And Maurice is like, you know this dude or whatever. And they take them out. And that is basically how the episode went off, y'all. Okay, they could have kept that. I'm sorry. So, of course, as we go into season, 5, when it comes back, then I guess it will be, Sabrina and Maurice locked up. And we all know that they not made for jail. But y'all put it in the comments. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. You know how we do. Let's discuss. Okay, put some flames in the air. Give me a wave. Let me know you came by. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you are so inclined. Till next time, toodaloo.